ready here whenever you are ready.
Hello everyone, we're Group 4 and we're going to be going over the interview process. My name is Jonathan Yankelunas and I'm going to be going over 3 points. The hiring guidelines that a hiring manager is going to be going through. The company needs that companies look for in individuals during an interview process. And the qualifications that separate each individual during an interview that makes them stand out and will help them get a job. Starting with the hiring guidelines, a hiring manager will reference the duties and responsibilities for the job, and he must also conform to the EEOC, as well as avoid any and all pitfalls when possible during the application and interview process. Stating that a job is not guaranteed, as well as stating that you are an equal opportunity employer, will save you from any legal issues that may come up, as well as asking for signed approval to perform criminal background checks and other things like a drug screening. For legal purposes, this will save you all the hassle and stop the issue if someone that doesn't get the job comes up to you and says, I didn't get the job because I feel I was subject to some sort of discrimination. To meet the company's needs, a hiring manager may reference the job description, and it'll help guide the interview to allow the hiring manager to find what is needed from the company. Through using the job description, it'll help you go over the job responsibilities and duties, and allow you to, if it's not stated clearly in the job description, discuss the starting salary. For time constraints, you want to try and avoid as many loaded questions as possible. This can mean like you don't want to bring up like personal issues like kids or family that may impede on the job. The whole point of it is to find the best reliable availability from the applicants to see who's best suited for the job. That means going over vacations, breaks, and not taking advantage of sick days. For qualifications, you want to ask open-ended questions and try and avoid as many yes-no questions as possible. This allows the person that is being interviewed to impress the interviewer and allows you to take better notes during the interview to find out what makes them most qualified to have the job over someone else. For taking notes, it's good to follow the key words that someone might say that makes them stand out, and taking notable points they might bring up in order to better weigh the pros and cons between each individual through comparing with others that have also been through the interview process. The whole point of taking notes for it is after you get the main key points that stood out to you during the process, it's easier to be able to choose someone that's best suited. Through using the resume, it's something that most hiring managers will bring up because, I mean, that's how you got the interview in the first place. They were impressed by something that they saw on the resume. So when they bring it up, they give you a chance to go into detail and impress them and maybe clarify a point that brought you to the interview in the first place. For myself, I have been in several interviews, 2 of which have got me jobs, and they're both very separate in their own ways. The first interview I was part of, I was interviewing for a job at ShopRite, and it's very formal to the point where I was dressed up in a tie and most of business casual, but the tie was involved. And they gave me packets and forms and files to fill out before they could send me off to do my basic customer service job. However, I also had another interview at a small business where it was less formal. I didn't apply, I just reached out to them and they got back to me, and they were able to basically hire me on how well I could present myself to them. It was more of my oral communication as to how I could present my qualifications and skills needed to perform the job. My only advice on any of you to that is being able to do the research before you go into a job interview, because you really never know what to expect when going into any of the job interviews. Next, Melanie is going to be going over the types of interviews that are practiced in a professional setting.
I'm Melanie. I'm going to be talking about the different types of interviews. And interview styles, which is going to be structured and unstructured, which basically has to do with the type of questions that the interviewer asks you. The 7 different types of interviews, and then my new and you is going to have to do with my internship that I had, and then how I got offered full-time because of it. So structured interviews are pretty much the interviewer following a strict schedule. They're not really allowed to go outside the boundaries of that. There's not really room for flexibility, and the interviewee has a lot of pressure because they only have really one chance to wow the interviewer. There's strengths and weaknesses to this. The strengths are that it's easy to replicate and very quick to conduct. You're kind of just flying through the questions and writing down what the interviewee says. And the weaknesses is, like I said, there's no flexibility, and the responses from the interviewee are a lot less detailed, and they don't really have as much time to say as much as they might want to say. Unstructured interviews are a lot more common because you can kind of break down a person through open-ended questions, and you can do like behavioral questions and situational questions. So there's more strengths to this than weaknesses. The strengths would be that it's more flexible and increased validity because the interviewer creates a better depth for the person, as they could see how they might react in certain situations that would be crucial to being a successful employee for the position that they're interviewing for. So there's 6 different types of interviews: competency-based, individual, panel, sequential, telephone, and video chat, which are kind of similar to the last 2. Competency-based interviews are more so of a method of interviewing. They identify skills, abilities, and talents that will account for on-job performance, and managers and supervisors can focus on how and why the candidate did something, and it's kind of a more futuristic perspective because you're thinking about like a long-term goal of like how this person is going to become an asset to your team in the long run. And they push a lot of behavioral questions and situational questions. So food for thought would be like how would this person handle themselves under pressure, or especially for my job that I'll talk about in my new and you. It's a lot about working with clients on hand, so the director spoke to me a lot about like how I would handle like talking to a client under pressure. Individual interviews are one-on-one. They're not as common anymore, and if they're used, they're more for like fast food chain restaurants and things like that, where the top management would just meet with a singular person. Panel interviews allow a variety of opinions on the candidate. The candidate sits before a group of employees, usually from a variety of managerial staff. It allows the panel usually will meet with the candidate after they meet with the HR representative. But they need the panel because the HR rep usually doesn't have enough expertise in the area that the position is offered to question the interviewee properly. Sequential interviews could bring you to different locations. It could involve travel. It could be one day, 2 weeks from now, and you would get a call back kind of a thing. It usually consists of meeting with a variety of different levels in the chain of command. Video chat and phone interviews are pretty much as simple as they sound. Phone interview isn't really that popular with big companies and firms because you don't really get a lot out of it. You can't see how the person's presenting themselves. You're not seeing like their physical appearance or things like that, so it's not as helpful. Interviews through internships, which leads me into my new and you, which is kind of like internal recruiting, which the last group spoke about in their presentation. So it's done with previously employed associates, and the internship acts like a long-term interview pretty much. So I work for PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I'm a wealth management tax services associate. But I interned last spring during their busy season, and I was offered full-time at the end of the internship. So right now, Rowan has a contract with PwC, but that was implemented after I interviewed, where they have to have a campus interview with an HR representative, and then they go to the office and meet with one director. I had a sequential interview, so my entire process was done at PwC Philadelphia, and I had a 30-minute interview with the senior, 30 minutes with the manager, 45 with the director, and then I was given a tour of the floors of the building and met the rest of the team that I would hopefully be working with. The types of questions I was asked, they were very open-ended and situational. The manager and the senior spoke a lot to me about like getting to know me and like whether I was team-oriented or would bring a lot to the table. And the director more so spoke to me a lot about the things I would be doing, the clients like Wells Fargo that I'd be working with and things like that. So I experienced a sequential interview. Overall, there's unstructured versus structured interviewing. Unstructured is more popular. 7 different types of interviews. And the approach that I had was a sequential interview. And now Anthony is going to talk about interview questions.
All right. So I'm going to discuss the types of interview questions you might encounter when applying for a position and going in for an interview. And there's a couple different types of questions they'll ask. There's straightforward, there's situational, there's a lot of some what people call dumb questions, and one big one that gets overlooked is asking the interviewer your questions, which is something that they look forward to a lot. They want you to be engaged in the interview as well. Now, the straightforward questions, they'll ask you direct questions. These are the questions you're going to expect to receive and you should be prepared for. And this is more of something you can have prepared. It's not off the cuff, it's not you, such as tell me how your background prepares you to do this job. It's crucial to be prepared, but it's something that you should be accustomed to, you should know the answers to. Some tips are describe how your skills correlate with the job. And a big thing is they want personal examples. They don't want generalities that I'm a team player on this. They want you to give facts and give actual numbers that back you up on what you're talking about. The next type of questions are behavioral questions. These are for them to see how you behave, what type of person you are. It's useful for employers to understand how you think and not only your skill set, but get to know you on a personal level, to know how you're going to interact with their team and the company as a whole. It's hard to predict what kind of questions. A lot of different companies have different types. It's good to be prepared with personal stories, just to give a more personal feel, to understand how you are. Big thing is to show how you handle conflict and going above and beyond your duties, because they want to see that you're going to put in a lot of effort, not just a minimal thing. The next type are situational questions. This is more focused on their type of business, how you're going to react in their situations. They're very direct. They ask you to demonstrate a specific situation in the future. Some tips for that is to give real-life examples again. They want to see factual things. They don't want to just hear the same answers over and over. Demonstrate how you research and show initiative to answer. So instead of you not having a fake answer and coming up with something just to give an answer, you want to be yourself and give them a very qualified answer. Now, something that is kind of new, it's more like through Google and the Facebook. They'll give you brain teasers or skill tests. These are for very highly competitive jobs, and they're meant to give you more of a cognitive type of approach. They're testing your ability to find something quickly, to be creative, and see how you work well on your feet. You must answer confidently, and it's just something, again, this is for very competitive jobs, so you need to be able to think on your feet, be creative, and again, be yourself. The opinion questions, these are, again, somewhat sort of like behavioral questions. They want to see what you think, how you feel, how you process questions. So it'd be, what would you do in these situations? Again, your ideals, your strengths and weaknesses, that's a big question. And be sure to answer truthfully again. They want to get to know you as a personal level, not just general questions. Describe weaknesses, but demonstrate how you're aware of them and how you're going to correct them, work on them, improve on them. That's a big thing they want to know. And then, again, as we said, the dumb questions. These are questions that you think have no real meaning, no real sense. But again, it's like just to get to know you a little better. As in, if you're an animal, what animal would you be? And the reason they ask you is they want to know, you have to think on your feet again and then give a descriptive answer as why you would choose that animal for that question. There's no right or wrong answer. These are, again, designated to create original thoughts. They want to see how you think on your feet and process information, not just pre-programmed answers as it would be for the situational questions. Now, a big one that gets overlooked and a lot of interviewers ask for are questions for the interviewer. So it's very wise to have a few quick questions, pre-planned, 2 to 3, keep them short, keep them concise. And a big way to come up with these questions is to look into the company, do some research, know what they're about, ask about their career development, ask about why they're generating profits in one area, not the other. You don't always have to wait till the end of the presentation to ask a question. If a natural opportunity arises to ask a question, feel free to ask a question. It shows that you're engaged. Now, for the new and you, this is the past 2 summers. I've worked at a recreational summer camp. It's quite large. I had some knowledge of the job beforehand, but I wasn't really knowing what I was expecting going into the interview process. So I did do some research. I knew some of the people working there. I expected one informal interview with the director, basic questions just involving what I was going to be doing there, if I knew how to handle myself. But what I actually entailed was a 30-minute interview with the director of recreation in his office. I had to go up formal wear, and then I had a team interview. So following the completion of my first interview, I had an interview with all the candidates. We all sat in a room. They all spoke to us about it, and we were given specific detailed situations that would arise with the children, what we would do, how we would react. And going off of that, there's a lot of different types of questions, and we had to think on our feet and come up quickly and work as a team. And then once from there, then we got broken up into teams and put in different parts in different areas. And I actually was put on the main recreational camp that had trips. We had to handle the children